I'm actually gonna intertwine information from the NDSC Manager of Grassroots Advocacy perspective and the perspective of me as a mom. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because I think from talking to Liz and Lauren and advocates across the country, there's some real important pieces of that I want you guys to hear. And Rachel's going to be sharing with you in just a little bit. The first thing I want to do is just talk about what is advocacy. And you all can read this, so you don't need me to read it to you. But, you know, advocacy is really the act or process of supporting a cause or proposal. Grassroots advocacy is where we gather people at the local level, individuals, to impact change or to affect change. And it's where where we use telling your personal story to try to turn what is into what it should be. So we put a face on real issues. And I hope many of you have heard that before. We provide education information to elected officials and community leaders on broad community issues, problems, and concerns. Often our affiliates want to know, is this the same as lobbying? And no, it's not, but it can be a part of your advocacy efforts. And that's a whole different webinar. And then there's a continuum of advocacy activities depending on your comfort level, your time, and your passion for issues. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about that in just a second. But my slides are not advancing properly. Hang on. There we go. Okay. This slide captures some different things that Rachel and I have done. But what I'm going to say to you tonight is I am one of those people that believes that we all have a story. And if we can tell our stories and tell them effectively, we can impact change and use that story to impact change on all kinds of levels, be it in medical care, the school system, adult services, whatever we need to work on, we can use our stories and use those to impact change. And I start out by saying I'm just a mom, and people say you're not just a mom, but really I am. There's really nothing special about me. I have been able to use my storytelling ability to be able to, and my passion to make an impact, positive change for people with Down syndrome and other intellectual disabilities. And my understanding of grassroots advocacy has simply come about from my involvement in the Down syndrome community. My grounding started out in rural Arkansas as a 4-H kid, where I got to go to Washington, D.C., and I learned how to organize things. So being the manager of grassroots advocacy for NDSC is really like a dream come true to me, because I get to work with people like you and alongside people like all of you every day. I say that I am just a mom. I really am just a parent, just like many of you have served in many of the same roles that you have. I'm persistent, I'm resourceful, and I'm a storyteller. And those are all things that you all can also do to impact change. I'm just going to give you a little background on our advocacy timeline. As I said, I'm not going to read all these, but I know I noticed in one of the groups that was set up for this webinar that there are a lot of questions about educational advocacy. And, you know, when our children are young, that really is what's foremost in our minds. And as I reflected on that, I realized that my advocacy really started in the education arena, because when my daughter was in early intervention, we started hauling her to advocacy things to advocate for funding for early intervention. I actually took her to our first town hall meeting for a sitting congressman when she was 2. And the reason I took her was because I knew if I took her, they would probably call on me, because I had a 2-year-old and they were afraid the 2-year-old might cry. And I was right. He did call on me first. And from there, we developed a really good relationship. But this just kind of goes through. And like I said, you're going to get a copy of this, but it just tells about some of the things we did. Like I had to learn about special education law, and that gave me my foundation for being able to advocate for my daughter to be included in the school system, but also in other things. So that information and that learning served me well. Then I went on and was involved with the local Down syndrome group and advocacy groups and went through trainings. And then I've been very fortunate to get to be a voice for people with Down syndrome. Because I started learning about these policies and going to conferences and meeting experts in these areas, I was able to then pull in people from my local organization and even our state to do advocacy. So an important part of what we do is partnering with others. So we all have a story and we use those stories to impact change, but we also have to be informed. Before I talk about being informed, I'm going to tell you the story about this picture. It says one person's story can impact change. Well, a lot of times people think that they can't impact change. They're just one person, but that's really not true. There are one persons all over our country who have made a difference. This is a picture of Rachel and who was at the time our sitting Congressman, Kevin Yoder. And we started visiting him when she was 12 years old, and we had just moved to we moved to Kansas when she was 9. So we didn't know anybody. Like I said, there's nothing special about us. We don't have money or political contacts, but we had our story and we were persistent. And so we started going and visiting these legislators and community leaders. And when Rachel was 12, she went to Washington, D.C. with me for the first time, and she met Congressman Yoder and told him about the ABLE Act. And then the rest is history. We were able to pass that with support from all of our legislators here in Kansas. But Congressman Yoder posted this on his social media. And I love it because at the bottom, you'll see he says, sometimes we can all become cynical about the legislative process and the ability for real people to be heard in the halls of Congress. On this bipartisan vote, we ensured that Rachel's voice and millions of other families' voices were heard. One person made a difference. In this particular situation, that was Rachel. Some of you have made a difference too, because I know some of your stories, but one person can make a difference. So how are we going to get started being an individual advocate? Well, we got to stay informed, as I said. So we're going to look to the National Down Syndrome Congress and the Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition and other organizations to help us to learn. We have to learn about issues if we're going to be able to talk about those issues. I learn something every single day when I'm talking to somebody in the policy arena about something maybe that I didn't know or something that's an injustice. But you have to take the time to learn these different things. And the way that you can do that is you can sign up for alerts. I know your state has a lot of different things like that, and I know MDAC provides those. Disability Scoop and Google Alerts are another good way to get information. Google Alerts can be set up so that you can put in keywords and then you get notices anytime there's something related to that. So there's lots of different ways that you can get information. Something I would really encourage you to do is to join NDAC. That's our National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I'd also encourage you to attend the National Down Syndrome Congress Convention. Next year, it's in July in Orlando. So all you self-advocates, get your parents ready to go see Mickey and Minnie. And every year at the NDSC convention, we do an advocacy training boot camp. Liz was there this year. Adrienne was there. Nancy may have been there. But it's a time when we do a little more in depth for beginner advocates, and it's a great time. We have a resource list, and our PowerPoint presentations from the advocacy training boot camp can be found on the NDSC website, and you're going to have that link a little later. These are some other websites that you can go to stay informed. I'm not going to go through all of these because you're going to be able to access this list and we don't want to waste time reading a list. But you can just see some of it gives you a broad spectrum of different websites that might be able to help you. One section of that resource list talks about national organizations that may have chapters, we'll call them chapters, in your state. For example, the National Disability Rights Network, Protection Advocacy. By federal law, every state has to have at least one protection advocacy agency, so you can find one in your state. Parent training and information centers for education advocacy. So you can see all those, but you should be able to find, hopefully find groups in your state and not just the federal or the US wide information organization on that. Here I have put in, I do more training helping people with federal legislation and reaching their federal legislators than I do state, but the process is the same for whatever you're doing. And it doesn't matter if you're doing state advocacy, federal advocacy, education advocacy, maybe it's something your county needs to needs to address. The steps are all kind of the same. We learn, we tell our story, we learn, we become informed, we learn who our representatives and senators are, we learn about how our state's legislation works, or how the school district is set up if you're talking about school district. In our school district of Olathe, for example, all of our students that have IEPs have case managers. They're the special education teacher, but they're the case manager. So that's the first place you go when you're trying to work on, when you need to advocate for something, and then you go up what I call the food chain. But these links will get you to find out. If you don't know who your United States Senator is, for example, you can go into this congress.gov and you can put in your address and it will tell you who your U.S. Senator is or your U.S. Representative is. You can usually find local people on local websites or Google them. Same with the state there, but you'll find all that on this page in the resources. One of the things I really encourage people to try to do is to Google elected officials, look them up on social media and learn about them, because you may find out that you have some common ground that would be helpful to you when you meet with them. So that kind of helps you to get to know them. Then this is just more information on how to find elected officials and how to track bills. One of the things I like to do is I go in and track the federal bills like the Able Age Adjustment Act, or there's a Social Security savings bill in Congress right now. You can go in, fill out a registration, and then you can sign up to get information about that bill anytime anything changes. I like to do that because I like to really thank people, especially if it's my representative and senators. I like to thank them, and this helps me to stay up to date to be able to do that. So getting down to the bones of it here, how can an individual advocate? Well, I said you've got to tell your story. That's at the top of this. And then you've got to learn. You've got to be informed, because we have to be informed if we're going to be able to tell our story. But to tell everybody has a story, and your story is unique to you. So what's important to you may be slightly different than what's important to Rachel and me. But she's got to show your face there. One of the things that we encourage people to do is to make a one-pager. And a one-pager, Lauren and I were talking about this earlier this week. Sometimes we do all about me's for our children or students when they're going to school. It's kind of a version of that. It's also sometimes called a bio. But what you do is in that, and we're going to show you an example, and I've got a little more information about this in another slide, but you're just going to put together this one pager that talks about you and what's important to you and what bill or what policy you want them to support or not to support and why it's important. You want to put some pictures in it because that draws people to it, but you don't want to put too many pictures. Your most powerful tool is your personal story. I mentioned that we have this advocacy training camp every year at the National Down Syndrome Congress, and we bring in speakers from across the country. Tony Zanfordino and Stormy helped us this year. We have legislators. This year we had legislators from Louisiana. Well, we don't know exactly what they're going to say, and every year when they get there, they all say the same thing. What you need to, the legislators that have been elected get up and say, you need to come and tell me your story, because if we don't tell them, they won't know. And guys, let me tell you, if we don't tell them what, they can't be experts in everything. So we want to become their experts. And if we don't tell them our story and what's important to us, trust me, there's somebody else that has their ear, and we certainly want them to be hearing from us what is important. Keep your one pager, and we're going to talk to you about how to make one of those in a minute. Keep your one pager updated and ready to use. I've known Adrian for a long time, and I bet he has a one pager that he can print out or email to anybody in about 5 seconds, because you never know when somebody's going to call and you're going to need it. Your one pager should include contact information, including your address and zip code, phone number, email. You may want to include your Twitter or social media handles. I mentioned a photo, and then the few sentences about yourself to ask them why you're asking, and always say thank you. It's very important to have an ask. Rachel knows that very well. When we go to visit a legislator, we want to ask them to do something. This is an example of Rachel's current one pager. We're not going to read through all of that, but you can see she put a couple of pictures. She tells, and this is on the NDSC website along with a couple of other examples of one pagers, but she talks in it about, she knows both of our senators and our congresswoman. So she makes it a little more personal, tells them a little bit about her job, and then she tells them about the Social Security Penalty Elimination Act. And then she tells them she wants them to support it and why. And down at the bottom, we removed the personal information from this because it's posted on a website, but it would always have her personal information on there so they can get in touch with her. Anytime we go to visit, we take one of these. And if I go to visit our legislators without Rachel, then I take one of these for her. So we've got our story. We know how we're going to, we know we got to tell our story. We know we have to be informed, and we know that we've got to put that story together in some format. Okay. So how can you advocate from there? Well, and you found out who your legislators are, or your school board members, or whoever, because we told you how to do that. So this is more for federal legislators, but it's kind of true for anybody. Once you have a personal relationship with like a U.S. Senator's office, a staff member in that office, or your state senators or representatives, you can then email them directly and not have to go through their online form system. If you are sending emails just through their online form system, that's not as effective as those personal relationships. I mentioned the storytelling and the visiting. I'm going to talk more about personal relationships. Guys, advocacy is in large part about building those relationships, and you'll see some examples of that as we talk. We're going to tell you about how to sign up for action alerts. So you can sign up for those action alerts and adapt that script to send an email and make it personal. I never send an action alert that I get from NDSC or the ARC or anyone exactly as they have written it. I change it to make it reflect my writing style and my own personal things. And that would be true for all of you too. You are likely going to be emailing staff when you are interacting, especially with federal legislators, sometimes state. On your local levels, you're more likely to be directly emailing with an elected person or school board member or principal or superintendent. But regardless, staff is important, especially on the federal level, because on the federal level, they're the ones that are going to be telling the representative or the senator the information about the bill or the issue. And so you really want to be respectful to them. Always, when you send your emails to these people, consider attaching a one-pager or some pictures. Just don't put in too much, because if you do, they may get caught and not ever get through to them. Embedding videos is a good way to reach out. I have a great example here. We are working on something, it's a horrible name, the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Modernization. And I wanted to speak to our state senator who is leading those efforts. So I sent her an email, and Rachel and I had just been in a video about, well, it was a news story about transportation and housing and lack of for people with disabilities. So we sent that link to her, and on the call today, she talked about that and said that made a difference to her. So doing videos, whether it's something like that or a video that you make, I think are always, I think in this day and age, especially, I need a lot of help with that. Rachel's really good at it. Calling is maybe more effective than an email because you can call elected officials. They want to hear from you as a constituent, and they need to hear from you. So reach out and call people. Appointed officials want to hear from you too. I mean, your state school boards are oftentimes not elected. They're oftentimes appointed. It doesn't matter if they're appointed or elected. They represent you, and you want them to hear from you. You don't have to be an expert to make these calls. You have to have some baseline information, but you can use those action alerts and look to other people for information. On the federal level, for sure, the staff keeps tallies of calls and certain issues, and that's how they act. And see, I think these action alert scripts are important because I put it in there twice, and I don't know why that moved. Your state and federally, you will see calls for call-in days where there's an issue going on, and we're calling our state all of us are calling our state representative that day because we want to make an impact. The same thing on the federal level. Testify. Something that you can do is submit written or give oral testimony at school board hearings in support of or opposing certain bills in state legislature to administrative agencies, etc. We can help you. I am gonna guess that Lauren and Liz can help you write testimony. We frequently take Rachel's one-pager and turn it into testimony. And I'm going to tell you, our self-advocates are knockouts with testimony. Everybody wants to hear them. Video testimony, we just requested video testimony as an accommodation because Rachel doesn't want to miss work. And we requested video accommodation for her to be able to testify at this IDD modernization hearing I spoke of. I used this picture for a reason. This was when Rachel was 15. No, she was 14. And this is at the Kansas legislature. And we had passed the federal ABLE Act, and then we had to pass it in the states. And you don't know him, so you probably don't see it. But back in the back there is our congressman, Congressman Yoder. It's unusual for a sitting congressman to come and testify at a state hearing like this, but he came and testified on behalf of ABLE, and he introduced Rachel. The next morning, the newspaper said, on a day when a sitting congressman testifies, it was an Olathe South freshman who stole the show. She's laughing about that, but I love that, and I love this picture because I think it kind of shows their relationship and the respect they have for one another, but it shows the importance of those relationships. Now, fast forward a couple of years, I didn't know this. The young man who took this picture kept up with Rachel and I through social media. Well, a few years later, he was working for the Kansas City Star, which is our large newspaper here, or used to be. I guess we're all online now. And he reached out through our high school because we were doing the Save Medicaid campaign. And he reached out through the high school because he wanted to talk to us about what we thought about the no caps, no cuts. And then he ran a great article. It's about relationships. And you never know when you do these things, how it's going to come back and help. Individuals can advocate. You want to also be connected with your local organization if you possibly can. I know you all do a great job there in Maryland, and you have your Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition a lot. And I think we may have some people on here from some of your other Down syndrome groups. I hope that you will all consider having some sort of advocacy committee as part of your organization, as part of your board. Include self-advocates, and you can include people that aren't part of your board in that. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute about including advocacy at your Down syndrome walk. And then I know Liz, I think I got her name right, said the distributed walk that you all have done the last couple of years during the pandemic, which I thought was a really clever thing to do. But other things, ways that you can advocate is to run for school boards, serve on PTO or PTA boards, all kinds of local boards you can get on. And if you're good at it, everybody's going to want you, so you'll have to say no. You may also get appointed to state committees and boards. I joke here and say no good deed goes unpunished, because I've been invited to be on a couple of committees that were really painful, but I was put on those committees because I had testified and worked on legislation, and I was able to be a voice for parents and for people with Down syndrome. Relationships are so important. So just some ideas of things you can do. When I am emailing with my legislative offices and my state legislators and even people here locally, it's not always going to be me asking them for something. We send holiday cards to our elected officials. If Rachel was in the Just Like You Down syndrome video, we sent a link to that to our elected officials. We send them articles from time to time about things that are going on. We invite them to events. Sometimes they can come, sometimes they can't. We send them interesting information, but you want to stay in touch with them and build relationships. So, and you get to know them better, and it just keeps the doors a little more open for you. If you're going to invite an elected official to one of your organization's event, please talk to your director about that before you invite them. It's really good to invite them, but you do have to jump through a few special hoops if you're going to have elected officials, especially if they're state or federal legislators. This is something from many years ago when we were in Tennessee. Our Down syndrome group there did something called the Imagine the Possibilities tent. And what we did, it was like a big top circus tent. And you had to basically walk through it to get to anything at our walk. And we did a focus there on what our self-advocates were doing, and organizations you could sign up for advocacy. But it was very, very, very effective. And they did it for years and years and years. I think they stopped when the pandemic started, but it's a really effective, fun thing to do. And I'm happy to talk about that to any of you on the side. Social media. So social media can be a tricky thing. We need it, but you need to be really, really careful with social media. And I say that because I want you all to know that what you put on social media is going to be there forever. And believe it or not, people who are running the social media accounts, be it the legislator, elected official themselves, or one of their staffers, if you say what I call ugly things on social media, then they may remember you, and that may not be a good thing. So I really advise people to be careful about what you say and post on social media. You will need to like, follow, and friend your elected officials. And, you know, even if you don't agree with them, it's still a good thing. And I have become friends with a number of people in our legislative offices, they're staffers. So we're friends on social media, and they're the people often managing these accounts. So you want to get to know them. Just a factoid, Twitter is still the most common way to interact with staff on the federal level. You want to use hashtags. In the Down syndrome community, hashtag Down syndrome is probably the most popular. YouTube and TikTok are growing in popularity. I don't really know a whole lot about either one of those. Video, my daughter's laughing at me. Video clips are an effective way to share messages, and Rachel's going to talk to you about that. Yeah. Connecting with local TV, radio, sports, entertainment personalities on social media is helpful, because I mentioned we did a piece on a news station about transportation and housing. That came about because I started following a young woman who was a reporter here in our community who had gone to the same college I did, and we got to be friends. And so she came to me when she was looking for somebody to do that interview. Also consider starting or joining Facebook related groups like hashtag 321 advocate, inclusion for children with Down syndrome, or there's a lot of state advocacy groups. Does MDAC have a Facebook group?
Yes, we do.
We do.
So y'all want to join that, okay? All right. Cross disability advocacy is very important. Do not stay in our Down syndrome bubble. Our voices are stronger together. Sometimes we will advocate for things that may not be the #1 priority for people with Down syndrome, but they're important to our partners in the disability community. And then guess what? When we need partners, they're going to come and help us. So it's real important to try to work across and with other organizations. I'm not going to read all of this because I think you all know a lot of this and it's been mentioned on some other slides. I do want to warn you to be sure that you kind of vet all DS groups and disability groups are not the same. And sometimes they may have a lack of policy expertise and they're not working in coalition with other people. And that can be dangerous. May not be intentional, but sometimes there's unintended consequences for people with disabilities. This is the list of some of the coalition work that we do at NDSC. And I know Ricky Sabia is one of your members and she's our education person at NDSC. Ricky is really the voice for people with Down syndrome and a lot of coalition work because we have some unique learning things and Ricky really does represent us and we're very fortunate to have her. Local level advocacy, I'm going to skip because Liz is going to talk about that. This talks about information that you need to know for all levels of government. And I'm just going to quickly say you need to know who makes the decisions, who are the key leaders, like who is the Speaker of the House or who is the Senate Majority Leader, who is the president of your school board, who is the school board member who covers your community, who is the city council person that covers your community. State school board and the state special education school board may align with the community as well. So you want to learn those things. Advocacy reminders real quick. Respect. You always want to be respectful when you are doing advocacy. I have had some staffers, not very often, but we've had some staffers who've been really rude to us before. And I bite my tongue. That doesn't mean you cower down. It just means that I bite my tongue and don't say what I want to say and try to continue on a path where I can have a good relationship with those people. And that has always worked out. So we can still be I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but guys, we can be respectful even when we disagree with people. In advocacy, there's no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. Who you know today as your representative may not be your representative tomorrow. Our Congressman Yoder was voted out. And you know what? I tweeted at our Sharice Davids the night she was elected and said, we look forward to working with you. And she sent me a private tweet message and said, please reach out to this person to set up a meeting because I would like to meet you and your daughter. So people are going to change, but we stay the course. Elected officials love to see their pictures on things, guys. So take pictures and put them on social media and in newsletters and recognize them. Relationships with these people are a big part. The storytelling, the relationships, those are just key importance to being able to do advocacy work. I've mentioned this before. Do not be respectful of staff and realize how powerful they are. And I'm going to give you an example of that. When we first started going to Congressman Yoder's office, there was a gentleman in his office answering the phone. His name was Brent Robertson. Well, so he was the low person on the totem pole in the office. Well, guess what? He, a few years later, went to work for Congressman Roger Marshall, who was another congressman from the state of Kansas. Well, he went on to become his chief of staff, and now who is Representative Marshall is now Senator Marshall. Well, we get meetings with that office because we had a good relationship with Brent. And it all goes back to that first meeting those many years ago when we met Congressman Yoder. So you never know. I'm about to turn it over to Rachel. Self-advocates are the most effective advocates. You need to engage them in all aspects of advocacy. have them bring a one-pager about themselves to meetings, provide the tools and trainings they need. And I know you all do some of that there in Maryland. Have them participate in training, have them help teach training. And remember to create and include opportunities for those who use alternative or augmentative communication. I often say we want our self-advocates to find their voice. I am not necessarily speaking about their physical voice. I am actually speaking about their ability to advocate, and they may do that in a different way than with a physical voice. So we want to provide those opportunities. We're going to let Rachel do her piece now, okay?
Okay. Hi, I am Rachel Nicole Mast. I am 23 years old. I love to tell people about my life, my dreams, and my hopes. When I started school, I was in the same classes as my friends, like being in school with my other friends. When I was in 3rd grade, we moved to Olathe, Kansas. Olathe is my hometown. My parents always had me to come to my IEP meetings. I didn't stay for a long because I did not like missing classes.
Oops, sorry.
My parents want to be sure my plans were about me when I wanted. In music school, my mom comes to my class every year, and we did a PowerPoint about Down syndrome and me. We would also invite everyone to our Down syndrome walk and to be a part of Rachel's Razorbacks. That's a name that we've been asking for. Like last couple of days, we did a walk, and we actually did a sign called Rachel's Razorbacks. So it's really a cool thing to be a part of the team. 1 year, everyone in my class joined my team. And please also buy your class to come to this team. It's a great opportunity to have all your the people that you love in your group. He also sent a home a letter to the parents telling them about the walk and telling them about me. A lot of my parents thanked her for doing that. In middle school, I started sharing a PowerPoint at the beginning of my IEP meetings. I was in a class and we just like you Down syndrome video, and we shared that with my teachers and friends. And please watch this on YouTube. I like to give a lot more likes on it. I got a great likes on my YouTube. As I got older, I stayed longer and I be more involved in my meetings. In high school, I was on student council for 4 years. I was inducted in the National Honor Society. I was a Olathe South participant. I was the girls volleyball manager for 4 years. Go Falcons. This is my friend Hayden. You may not know her, but she's one of my friends I made for volleyball. She was on the volleyball team, and she made a hashtag for me, best manager ever. We are still friends. We dropped speech therapy in middle school, but made me happy. When I was in 10th grade, I told my parents I would like to go back to speech therapy because people had a hard time understanding me. The speech therapist helped me and more wise for praise, and more works in English and work with me on my PowerPoints. If you see this picture, it's me in my high school play I did in my high school. I was also in a social group called LinkedIn. It's where people with Down syndrome can actually come and be part of the group. we did fun things, but we also more self-advocacy and mentorship skills. I graduated from Owaver South High School on May 20th, 2018. I received a diploma just like my friend.
Oops. Okay.
After I graduated, I went to Missouri State Bear Hire Program for 3 semesters. Go Bears. Then I did an internship program called Pocket Search that I also graduated from also. My jobs were hospital dining services, MC3's houseman, price shopper, grocery stacker. I have had 3 jobs. Olive Garden hostess for 3 years. Sporty Casey ticket taker for 6 months. Happy Crazy Cook for 4 months. Now I'm a patient queer at the University of Kansas Medical Center. I love that job already. I love my job. And my dream is to get married and live in a pink house. This is my boyfriend Timothy that you never met yet. We met at Missouri State. He is also another Arkansas fan. You also like about him also. I'm a self-advocate. My parents started taking me to visit elected officials at community leaders when I was little. When I was 12 years old, my mom took me to Washington, D.C. There is a silly law that won't let people with disabilities save money. And that makes me so sad. I took Husband Yeager and Sam Moran and Sam Roberts my story. I guess what? They told their friends in the past the Able Act. When I was about to give a speech to the elected officials in Kansas, this is actually at Kansas Connection also, to give my speech, and guess what? They passed the Kansas Able Act on January 26, 2017. I opened the first Kansas Able savings account. I am very proud to be able to save some of my money from my job at KU and my Able savings account. And I love to treat my mom to lunch. Rachel's Pink House. You may wonder about Rachel's Pink House. The first time I met Sam Moran, I told him he should sponsor the Able Act because I want to live in a pink house. But from then on, it has been a symbol of my dreams. People see me and my mom a lot of pictures of pink houses. Sam Moran says I'm the best lobbyist in Washington, D.C. All right. Rachel's tips for self-advocacy. Be nice. If you can, visit in person and get to know staff members. Treat staff members respectfully. Visit the local or home office too. Tell them your story. Tell them right law is very important to you. Take your one pager. Follow up and stay in touch. And also send some holiday cards and graduation announcements and TV interviews about them to events or to visit your school or not on profit. Invite them to your Down syndrome walk or other amenities events.
Tips for social media.
Reduce steps to social media. Be nice. Again, be nice. Take a picture of your registration or with staff member and make sure you ask permission before you ask. Post on your social media and tag the people in the picture. say thank you. They would love to say thank you to you guys. Make a video, tweet, post on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Tag your rated officials. You will need to follow them. Tell them what you need them to do. Tell them why it's very important to you. And say thank you. Visit the link to a video I made asking Sam Moran to support the Able Age Adjustment Bill. I am Rachel. I'm a self-advocate. I have the same hopes and dreams as people who have and do not have Down syndrome. What I have to say is important. I want my elected officials to hear my voice. I'm a proud to be a voice for others with Down syndrome. And please do me, we're better together. And thank you so much.
Maybe, thank you so much. I can't get the, oh, there we go. All right, I know we're over on time. We are so sorry. Y'all can read this. I'm just gonna tell you what NDAC is and a couple of things and then let Liz do her piece. The National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. Thank you, Rachel. That was really good. Okay. And if you have questions for her, you can email her too. NDAC is the National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. It is the grassroots advocacy program for the National Down Syndrome Congress. This is how we bring advocates from across the country together to advocate on issues, that federal issues, but also state issues from time to time. We do quarterly webinars. We have a private Facebook group and we provide networking opportunities. We have 639 members. I got a new member today. 49 group members, which your group, both your Down syndrome of Montgomery County and MDAC are members of. We do need members in Alaska or Wyoming if you know anyone there. We have a short-term goal of having 2 self-advocates from every state. You can help us with that. And I have a long-term personal goal of having at least 1 member from every congressional district. It's very easy to join. Like we're going to provide this stuff to you, but you can go to the NDSC website under policy and advocacy, and you can find the facts and you join online and it's immediate. And then you can be added to our Facebook group. As I say here, everything mentioned in this webinar, you can find on our website, including a resource list, examples of one-pagers, a one-pager template, action plan, an example, an NDSC advocacy toolkit for self-advocates, and all the PowerPoint presentations from boot camp. This is the cover of our advocacy toolkit for self-advocates that was under the leadership of Christopher Bennett, a self-advocate, in conjunction with the NDSC policy team. This tells you how to sign up for all of our action alerts and policy and advocacy things that we send out. And then this is your action items, and you can come back and look at this. If you're not a member of MDAC, sign up. If you're not a member of NDAC, sign up. Create a one-pager. Then if you don't know your U.S. representative and senators, look those up and then send them an introductory email. And Liz and Lauren are going to hold y'all's feet to that, okay? Liz, there you go.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to run through these pretty fast because everyone will get the slides and there's a lot of detail here, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of Maryland specific information. So the Maryland General Assembly has 2 chambers, the House of Delegates and the State Senate, and we have a part-time legislature here. So we have a 90-day session, starts in January and ends in April. Maryland is generally considered a blue state. We have veto-proof majorities in both the House of Delegates and in the State Senate. And currently we have a Republican governor, but sort of according to the polls, we're likely to have a Democratic governor elected in this coming November. But remember that, you know, as Jawanda and Rachel both reminded us, you know, bipartisanship is really important. So regardless of who your representative is, we gotta have those great relationships. Next slide. So the Senate and House each have a number of committees and a number of subcommittees. The important thing on this slide is twofold. One is you can use this link here to find your current legislators, which is really important. But you should also know that there was pretty massive redistricting in Maryland this year. And so it's likely for a lot of folks that the lines got redrawn and you may have different people be in a different district now than you were previously. So you may be voting in a new district this November, and you'll have be in a new district starting in January. So there's two different links there for you to check out. And then once you figure out who your representatives are, you can go back and see which of those committees your representatives serve on, and particularly if any of them are in leadership. Next slide. So, so this next couple slides go through the legislative process. The basic gist of it is that many bills in Maryland are pre-filed, which means they're written before the session starts. They're sort of ready to go on day one. You know, MDAC will let you know about bills that are happening that will affect people with Down syndrome and other intellectual and developmental disabilities, as will a lot of great organizations that we work with. The basic idea is that bills get introduced in one chamber, they get assigned to one of those committees that we talked about, and it's there in the committee that there might be a hearing about a bill, and that's your opportunity to submit written testimony or to go and give oral testimony for or against a bill. And then if a bill makes it out of one chamber, it crosses over to the other chamber. Next slide. And then it goes through a similar process in the other chamber. If it passes both the House of Delegates and the Senate, it goes to the governor, who can then choose to either sign it, veto it, or if the governor doesn't do anything, the bill becomes a law. Next slide. You can get into all those details. So one important thing is that Maryland has a Department of Disabilities, and it's one of the few states that has a cabinet level department. And it's going to be one thing that we'll be watching for, and that will be important after we have a new governor elected in November, will be who gets appointed as the secretary of that department. So that will be something important for us to all pay attention to next year. This slide lists a lot of the organizations that we work with and that do a lot of the advocacy work here. So there's the Developmental Disabilities Council, and then the Developmental Disabilities Coalition that includes the ARC Maryland, Disability Rights Maryland, People on the Go, and so forth. Next slide. Okay, so a couple things like Jawanda talked a lot about, you can sign up with some of those organizations to get their emails, to get their newsletters, to get action alerts from them. Another thing that you can do in Maryland State Advocacy is to go to Developmental Disabilities Day at the legislature. So there's a day in February, and the DD Council sponsors that day. And you can, hundreds of people all go to Annapolis on that one day. We hear about all the legislation that's happening that affects the disability community. And then you can go and meet with legislators and talk to them about some of the things that matter. So we will certainly put out information so that folks can sign up for that when that happens. And again, it's typically in February. Another great program here in Maryland is the Partners in Policymaking program. Here it's run by the ARC Maryland. It's a year-long advocacy training program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and also their family members. And Lauren and I both went through that program, and a lot of folks who are on this call I know have gone through it. Audrienne, Hari, Becky is here, and I'm sure many other folks as well. The deadline for applications for this year's program are actually tomorrow, so you might not have enough time to get it all together by then, but we always put out information to let people know when that is coming up. And then, like Jawanda and Rachel both talked about, getting to know your state legislators is so important. They want to know you. And they're so, I have found state representatives to be extremely receptive and interested in getting to know people. So I run into my state senator at the farmer's market at least once a month. So, you know, they're out in the community and ready to talk to you and hear your stories. Next slide. So this is just a little slide about MDAC, and we now actually have 103 individual members. We have representatives from the 5 major Down syndrome organizations that are all on our steering committee. And we're really looking for new members, especially from Southern Maryland, the Eastern Shore, and Western Maryland, where we don't have a lot of representation right now. And if you are not yet a member of MDAC, that's the link, and it was also in the chat, and we'll push it out again to everybody on this call so that you can sign up and join us. And that is it.
Just real quick, this is everybody on our policy team and how you can contact us. And this is mine and Rachel's contact information. She includes some of her social media on here, not all of it, but you can reach her as well.